Chapter 4. Faith, the prerequisite to power. The wise man must be wise before, not after the event. Epicharmus. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1. But first you must believe. Peter Pan. Is there a force, a power, a science, call it what you will, which few people understand and even fewer use to overcome difficulties and achieve outstanding success? I firmly believe there is, and this lesson will explain it, so you may use it for the attainment of your chief aim. Great men and women have never found the easy road to triumph. It is always the same old route, by way of hard work and plenty of applied faith. Let me tell you of the power of applied faith. At one time in his life, 18 cents and 2 cans of sardines were the only thing that stood between him and starvation. He moved from one cheap Greenwich Village apartment to another, simply because he couldn't pay the rent. 20 years of his life had already been spent in the military. While serving as a cook in the Coast Guard, he used nights and free time to write letters for fellow enlistees to their wives and girlfriends back home. Men who were either illiterate or found it too difficult to express themselves, at least on paper, became routine customers. It was during this time that he too fell in love with writing. He didn't know it then, but his literary talents would eventually carry him to fame and fortune. But his success was anything but instant. Like so many things in his life, writing did not come easy. Creativity and composition were brutally difficult barriers. He labored 7 nights a week for 8 years before he sold his first article. When he retired from the Coast Guard, he dedicated himself full time to his writing. Though his income was paltry and erratic, his bills never failed to arrive on time. He was offered several 9-to-5 jobs, but refused them all. Why? Because I'm a writer, he said. I've got to keep writing. Determined to scratch out a living in the literary field, he came up with an idea, a book which as originally planned would take no more than 3 years to write. Actually, the project took 12 years, leaving him on the brink of bankruptcy, both financially and spiritually. For these 12 years, he spent every waking moment either writing or researching. He devoted more than 6,500 hours in 57 libraries on what seemed to be an endless search. His airfares alone, commuting between the United States, London, and the west coast of Africa, totaled more than $30,000. 9 years after starting this complicated task, he found himself $100,000 in debt, depressed, and contemplating suicide. While preparing an editorial assignment on a private yacht of a friend, he figured the only solution to his problems was for him to simply throw himself overboard and end it all. But something stopped him. At his lowest point of despair, after hundreds of setbacks that penetrated the depths of his soul, while constantly surrounded and harassed by unsympathetic family and friends, he met his greatest source of power, applied faith. Recognizing, perhaps for the first time in my life, he said, the amazing power of an enduring faith, I carefully surveyed my bleak circumstances to determine just how much of this form of riches I possess. The assessment was both revealing and gratifying. In his own words, these are the thoughts of a man who discovered how to condition his mind for the expression of faith. Something rose up within, greater than himself. Believing his book would be of enormous value, he dismissed all notions of ending his life. Roots, the book that made Alex Haley a millionaire, traced the story of the author's family beginning in Africa in 1750 and ending 117 years later in Henning, Tennessee. This monumental 885-page bestseller had the largest printing for a hardcover book in U.S. publishing history. Since 1977, For His Faith Haley has been honored by more than 400 different countries, institutions, and organizations for his faith. Haley has become one of the most celebrated writers ever, winning a Pulitzer Prize in the process. For his faith, Roots, the television series, broke all viewing records and seized 9 Emmys, becoming the highest rated television show ever. What was Alex Haley's response to his newfound success? He declared, "The only way to succeed is through hard work and plenty of faith." The person who succeeds in life is one who is convinced that faith is necessary to make contact with infinite intelligence, the source of all power. Believing is the beginning of faith. When the force of faith is unleashed, power becomes unlimited and possibilities are without end. The magnificent power of faith is yours to control through your own undeniable, inalienable privilege of thought. Faith is a state of mind that has been labeled by Napoleon Hill as the mainspring of the soul, through which your aims, desires, and goals may be translated into their physical equivalent. When you truly believe and comprehend this attribute, putting it into action, you may then control or at least be able to adjust to every setback or negative experience in your life. Faith is a means by which you can put yourself in a frame of mind to tune in and draw upon the power that controls the entire universe. I have related Alex Haley's story to emphasize the manner in which one may clear his mind even in the midst of chaos and insurmountable difficulties, and prepare it for the expression of faith. Stated in his own words, you have the story of a man who discovered how to condition his mind for this expression. And what a dramatic story it is. Dramatic because of its simplicity. Faith is the prerequisite to positive power. It gives perspective, accurate analysis, and the ability to forge ahead. For the individual seeking to develop a powerful, persuasive personality, there is no substitute for honest self-evaluation and faith. Think of someone you know who always seems to be convinced that he or she will succeed. That person is one who understands faith and knows the power that it transmits. Seemingly, nothing can destroy the determination of a person who thinks, believes, and possesses a faith strong enough to move mountains. Every man or woman must have faith to achieve. No one can aspire without it. The Creator has not likened us to his image with aspirations and longings for heights to which we cannot climb. Have faith. Life should be lived in earnest. It is no idle game, no farce to amuse and be forgotten. You cannot have too much of that yearning one calls aspiration without an ample supply of applied faith. Have faith in yourself. Have faith in the Creator. As the rational person knows, there has to be a plan and a power controlling the universe. You must realize that you, the individual, are a minute expression of infinite intelligence, and as such, there are no limitations except those accepted in your own mind. As the carpenter from the plains of Galilee said, according to your faith, so be it unto you. When you find things in your life that you feel need changing, summon this principle. By increasing your level of faith, you will gain new strength and a new belief in yourself. Set in motion the words of Booker T. Washington, the Wizard of Tuskegee, who urged black Americans to start where you are with what you have, knowing that what you have is plenty enough. If you believe that you can take the first step, that very thought resonating within your being will give you the power to take the next step, and so on. Fortunate is the man or woman who has had the gentle guidance of parents, guardians, or mentors, who instilled in him or her, in the early formative years, the principle of faith. The following example points up the influence of such training. Belief, the stepping stone to faith. When she was 5 years old, Bonnie's right leg was amputated just above the knee. a blunt and painful remedy for a birth defect that had stunted the growth of her leg. When doctors in a Los Angeles hospital performed the surgery, her right leg reached only to the knee of the left. The amputation was only the first in a series of surgical procedures that would be performed over a 6-month period. For reasons that remain a medical mystery, Bonnie St. John's right leg was missing a growth center at birth, resulting in a shortened femur. Until the surgery, she had spent her childhood wearing a bulky leg brace and orthopedic shoes. It was hoped that a prosthesis would free her from any limitations. Everyone knew Bonnie would not walk, run, or play like normal children. Everyone, that is, except her mother. I just chose to ignore her handicap, insisted Ruby St. John. I didn't focus on it. Rather, I asked our doctor just how much Bonnie could do with one leg. His reply was, as much as she believes she can do. So I told my husband, that's what we're going to do. We'll let Bonnie decide what her limits are. Breaking through the mental barriers proved to be a formidable obstacle for the young girl. For nearly a decade after the amputation, Bonnie shut herself away, refusing to venture any farther than her bedroom door. Only on occasion did she peer through her window at the children playing outside, the same children who in the past teased her and poked fun and called her wooden leg. Beliefs and limits can sometimes become roadblocks. Many people think of themselves in terms of what they can't do, rather than what they can do. Bonnie knew what she couldn't do. She faced it every morning when she strapped on her prosthesis. But in her mind, she was looking for something she could do. When a friend took her on a ski trip, she found her niche. Bonnie was 15 when she first stood on skis. It was an experience to remember. It was a disaster, she recalled. I was numb with cold, and I kept falling down. But the sport added a new dimension to her life. She became aware of the relationship between mind and body, and the power of the belief system. After all, skiing with two legs requires some skill, but skiing with one leg required faith. With practice and pluck on the slopes, she became more self-confident as well as proficient. In the summer of 1981, Bonnie left home to study at Cornell University in upstate New York. It was there that she decided to try out for the U.S. Handicap Olympic ski team. Such a goal might be dismissed as misguided dreaming for someone who had skied only 2 years, not to mention an amputee. But a steadfast determination and iron will convinced Bonnie that her goal was possible. Soon she enrolled in the Burke Mountain Academy, a ski school that gave in-depth instruction to a select group of Olympic hopefuls. Bonnie was the first handicapped racer to ever be considered by the school. For the next 6 months, Bonnie had 1,000 reasons to quit. For starters, she began her training by falling off a skateboard and breaking her left leg, leaving her totally incapacitated. Once recovered, she hiked and cycled every hill, participated in all drills, and competed in non-handicapped events. She even raised money by working part-time as a waitress to finance her tuition. By the time Bonnie left Burke Academy, she was one of its best skiers. In April 1983, Bonnie's dream became a reality. She was named to the U.S. Handicap Olympic ski team. In January, she competed at the 1984 Winter Games in Innsbruck, Austria, capturing a silver and 2 bronze medals. Bonnie's belief system has spilled over into other areas of her life. A Cornell and Harvard graduate with a 4.0 grade point average, she was rewarded with a Rhodes Scholarship. Today, she is nearing the completion of a PhD in economics at Oxford University. Bonnie St. John is a perfect example that anything within the realm of human understanding is possible for the believer. Now, what do you believe? I have made myself familiar with the lives of outstanding black men and women. I have met and interviewed many high achievers, and I have often wondered just what it was that took them over the top. I have seen coaches take apparently inferior teams and infuse them with that something, a force that drove them to victory. I have seen average individuals in the depths of their despair and anguish do an abrupt about face, reaching heights unknown. Apparently, I was born with an insatiable curiosity, for I have always had a yearning to seek explanations and answers. My inquisitiveness has brought me face to face with many peak performers, led me to many peculiar cases, and has directed me to read every book I could muster on the subject of achievement, psychology, and metaphysics. Gradually, I discovered that there is a golden thread that runs through these teachings and makes them work for those who sincerely accept and apply them. This thread can be named in a single word: belief. Belief is the same element or factor that causes people to be cured through mental healing, enables others to climb the ladder of success, and produces phenomenal results for all who accept it. Why belief is a miracle worker is something that cannot be satisfactorily explained, but have no doubt about it, there is genuine magic in believing. I have counseled individuals who've said, there is a position I desire very much, but I could never fill it. Initially, I often agreed with them that they could never acquire a certain position as they are now. But it is totally self-defeating to believe that they must remain that way. No one is unchangeable. One must believe in his power of accomplishment. This is not so much faith in yourself as faith in your potential. Without it, many of your goals and desires will remain beyond your reach. Success-oriented individuals enjoy continued success because they expect or anticipate success in advance. But the majority, plagued by long strings of repeated failures, are unabashedly accustomed to failure and expect no more out of life. The aphorism, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he, not only embraces the whole of man's being, but reaches out to every condition and circumstance of his life. You've learned by now that a man or woman is what he or she thinks. His or her character becomes the total of all his thoughts. Now take this concept one step further and condition your mind. As the Master stated, if thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. The one way to separate yourself from the mass of humanity and climb out of complacency is to hitch your wagon to the star of some strong purpose or chief aim and believe. Here is a basic faith statement. To do something, anything, you must first believe it can be done. Believing something can be done triggers the mind into motion to do just that. Find a way to do that which you desire. Mind you, things do not occur because of special magical powers, but because people believe so intensely that they become affected by words and actions. In plain terms, your life is what you believe. If, for example, you believe in scarcity, think about it regularly, and make it the focus of your conversations, I am sure you will see your fair share of poverty in your life. On the other hand, if you believe in happiness and abundance, think of these attributes and act on your belief in them. There's a good chance that you will manifest wealth, supply, and opportunity. Modern philosophy asserts that if you have confidence in your abilities, believing in yourself, you can accomplish those things that might have been inadvertently labeled impossible. Belief is the prerequisite that improvement is possible, in spite of outward appearances. Believe in yourself. Have faith in your abilities. With a sound self-confidence, you can and will reach your goal. Push aside all self-limiting beliefs. Somewhere in your makeup lies dormant the seed of achievement which, if aroused and placed into action, would carry you to great success. Most of us feel that we are capable of more than we've shown, but we don't take the necessary steps to change our circumstances. This is life's paradox. Many apparently well-educated men and women in their respective fields will, in their broad ignorance, condemn the idea of thought power and make no effort to apply its teachings. And yet, each of them, if successful, has consciously made use of it. There are those who will believe only what they wish to believe or what fits into their scheme of beliefs, summarily rejecting anything to the contrary, lessening all that they could possibly become in the process. Every man-made creation starts with seeds of thought. The idea is then germinated with action to form its physical equivalent. All that we savor or avoid is eventually transformed through this process. But beware, when you live exclusively in form, the physical senses, you live in a world of limitations. Think of all the limits that are placed on your form. You can lift only so much weight. You can run only so fast. You can work only so hard. Limits are all in the dimension of form. Now consider the part of you without physical limits, the dimension of thought. There are no limits to your ability to think. If you can imagine yourself doing anything or achieving anything, then you can attain the physical equivalent. In this context, the power of belief is dialectical. It can work against you as well as for you. It can defeat you as well as place you on the pedestal of success. If you are currently burdened by any self-limiting belief, resolve to dispose of them immediately. In 1963, Bob Hayes, called by sports writers the world's fastest human, reached a top speed of 28 miles per hour during a 100-yard race, then the fastest speed recorded by man. Will anyone run faster? The experts thought. Today, no one really knows how fast a man or woman can run because we are not certain what limits the performance of runners. We are not certain what limits. Most theories center around the physical, the idea of energy being released from the leg muscles. Energy released in this fashion is a chemical process triggered by an electrical impulse from the brain. Seemingly, the faster the pulse from the brain, the faster energy is released and the greater the power of the runner. For more than 3,000 years in the history of the sport, no one has ever run as fast as Bob Hayes. However, the only limits to this breakthrough were established by Bob Hayes' belief, not by impulses from his brain. Before they can predict the ultimate limits of the human body, theorists must first account for other factors involved in the steady improvement of achievement. For example, in 1968, Bob Beamon stood motionless after jumping 29 feet 2.5 inches, nearly 2 feet farther than anyone had ever jumped before. While he was aided ever so slightly by the lower air resistance due to Mexico City's high altitude, there was no denying the magnitude of this feat. Beamon had gone so far beyond what was then considered the limit of human abilities that sports physiologist Ernest Jokel called his performance a mutation. When questioned about his record-breaking leap, Beamon ecstatically said, "I believed I could do it." In 1933, aware of the limitations that ignorance imposed, Charles Drew, who ranked within the top 5 of his medical school class, was awarded 2 prestigious fellowships. The fellowship allowed him to continue his studies in a field that was to have a profound impact in the medical profession. Drew continued his research at Columbia University, where 7 years later he published his thesis, Banked Blood, in which he uncovered new approaches to the uses of plasma preservation, transportation, and subsequent transfusion. It was considered the final word on blood preservation and was translated into numerous languages. Unbelievable? Well, for some it was. For you see, medical authorities during the time adopted a policy of blood segregation. That is, the collecting, storing, and separate administration of blood drawn from different races. Drew knew there was no scientific evidence for the continuation of such a dangerously wasteful procedure. His research concluded that there was no racial difference in human blood, and that plasma was to be classified by types, not race of donor. Again, another self-limiting belief proved believable. Need we hear more? Calvin Pete was 23 years old when he first handled a golf club. By the standards of this demanding and precise sport, he was labeled an old man, though he earnestly declared, "I never considered myself too old for this sport. I just enjoyed playing the game." Pete never took a lesson. As a result, he just hit ball after ball, sometimes 1,000 at a time, fine-tuning his game and analyzing every stroke. It is the natural reflex for all golfers to label this as impossible. Why? Because every professional golfer has had plenty of lessons, thousands of hours of individualized instruction in every phase of the game. Nobody approaches this sport without the rigorous assessment of a seasoned professional who can correct undetected flaws. Not so with Calvin Pete. To compound his general lateness, when he was 11 years old, Pete fell from a tree on his grandmother's farm in Mississippi, breaking his left elbow in 3 different places. To this day, he cannot straighten his left arm completely. Nonetheless, unfazed, Pete simply learned to play golf his way. At 32, he left the amateur ranks, finally qualifying for the tour's professional circuit in 1975. Since 1982, he has won more major tournaments, 11, and more money, $1.6 million, than most other golfers on the U.S. Tour. Today, Calvin Pete is the most unlikely champion in professional sports. A black man with a bent arm who has mastered a game where everyone else seems to be both young and well tutored. Consider the things in your life that you currently deem impossible. What are your self-limiting beliefs? Whatever they are, they can only be dismissed by applied faith. A better job? A business deal entitling you to a handsome commission? A major promotion? A college education? Whatever it is that you desire but think unreachable will undoubtedly remain so unless you change your thought process. Are you ready to do your destiny and climb the mountain of success? Do you have the audacity to step out from the crowd and capture what life really holds for you? If so, there's little you cannot accomplish if you unleash your faith. Being truthful to ourselves means taking the responsibility for making the best use of what we have. And what do we have? We have our underutilized minds, our abilities, our talents, and time, all waiting to be thrust into action by the guiding spirit of faith. These are our possessions, which comprise an immense amount of wealth that belongs to each of us. And it is the investment of our wealth that will determine our rate of return. But we must express these powers through the principle of faith. You may compare the average human being, filled with fear, with no faith at all, to the horse or elephant that meekly does what it is directed to do. It is completely unaware of its own strength. It does not know how easily it could do whatever it desires. Much in the same way, millions of human beings live in tiny self-imposed prisons of their own fashioning, completely unaware of their powers to be free, to do what they most love to do, and in so doing to reap a harvest beyond their wildest imaginations. If only they recognized this power of faith, they would not be slaves to any circumstance. As long as you consider that which you desire impossible, your subconscious mind will go to great lengths to convince you why the task is impossible. By allowing your mental processes to take command, you will be forever paralyzed by unnecessary barriers. Believe me, you've got what it takes. Never consider that you do not possess the ability to obtain all that you wish. A man who succeeds in life must not only know where he is going, but must settle within his mind with an unshakable faith that he is indeed capable of reaching any port, no matter how rough the sea or how distant the destination. Realizing this, he can remove any outside influence that may attempt to discourage him. Applied faith is the voice of authority speaking to all those who will prevail, no matter the odds or difficulties. Believe it can be done. That is basic to creative thinking. First, eliminate the word impossible from your vocabulary. Impossible is a word tainted with connotations of failure. Second, when confronted with a seemingly insurmountable task, commit your thoughts to paper. Write all the reasons why your goal or objective can be accomplished. Be detailed and specific. Many of us relinquish our desires prematurely simply because we've concentrated on why we can't accomplish more with our lives, when the only thing worthy of our mental concentration is why we can. Become receptive to new approaches. Welcome new ideas. Focus on achieving and attaining more with your life. Creative solutions will come. Some of your answers may entail better planning and organization of your task, or breaking away from the routine. And third, be courageous enough to venture forward to your goal. You'll find the solution for reaching your goal will present itself. Every adversity carries with it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. Repeated victories over your problems are the rungs on your ladder of success. And with each victory, you grow in wisdom, stature, and experience. You become a better, bigger, more successful person each time you meet and overcome an obstacle. As you eagerly accept the opportunity to do more, your level of complacency will slowly dissipate. What faith can do. This entire principle of faith is based on a single premise. Faith only enters the mind that has been properly prepared for it. The Creator has provided every individual with complete, unchallengeable control over its mind. You, in turn, can make the contact with your inner being, either positive or negative. As human beings, we are the only creatures on earth who can appropriate the power of the mind and direct it to ends of our own choosing. No other creature can do so. As humans, we can direct the power of our minds to the ends of our own choosing. We cannot. If we can direct the power of our minds to the ends of our own choosing, can we not therefore conclude that success or riches are absolutely assured us? We have only to apply this faith in our minds toward the achievement of our objectives. If you ever wished evidence of the power of faith, study the achievements of men and women who have applied it. At the top of the list comes the Nazarene. The basis of Christianity is faith. You can grasp this solid truth by gaining a thorough understanding of the most fundamental biblical teachings and those who have applied its philosophy in their lives. With good looks, hard work, and faith in God. Silence spread through the convention hall as each finalist was announced. The hush of the crowd grew more intense, and then a voice pierced the quiet over the public address system. Fourth runner-up, Miss Ohio. The applause was followed by a deafening silence. And third runner-up, Miss Illinois. The noise grew to fever pitch as it anticipated the next winner. And second runner-up, Miss Colorado. Now hearts began to pound, pulses escalated. The anticipation was overwhelming. Time stood motionless as the seconds seemed like eternity. As the two finalists stood center stage, both within a hair of achieving their lifelong dreams, one in particular reflected on her road less traveled. It took 7 hard years and 11 attempts in competitions held in 2 different states before Debbie Turner made it to the Miss America pageant. In 1988, after her 3rd failure in the Miss Arkansas pageant, Debbie and her father had a long talk. Although he never told her to quit, even he was beginning to stagger from the number of heart-wrenching defeats. Surrounded by confusion and dejection, and left stunned and lonely by the repeated setbacks, her mind gravitated to the following thoughts. Faith is the starting point of all achievement. It's the basis for all miracles and the only antidote for failure. Long before midnight, she kneeled by her bed and prayed, not for the completion of her goal, but for the faith to continue her journey. Determined and focused, Debbie redoubled her efforts to compete again. In 1989, she was living and attending school in Missouri. Believing she had a fair chance of winning the state's pageant, she entered the contest and captured the top prize. As Miss Missouri, she then competed against 51 equally successful and talented young women, all with their hearts set on winning the title Miss America. But now all of that was behind her. Her mind once again came full circle back to the matter at hand. The MC slowly approaches the mic and tears open the next envelope. After a painstakingly long pause, he finally ends the suspense. And the first runner-up, Miss Maryland, the new 1990 Miss America, Miss Missouri, Debbie Turner. It was a long and difficult road. After the competition concluded and the audience filed from the convention center, Turner fielded hundreds of questions during the ensuing press conference. It was here that she gave a clue to her extra added edge. It may interest you to hear it in her own words. Over the years, I have experienced my share of rejection. I was continuously told that the odds were against me. My musical ability was questioned. No other contestant had ever played the marimba and won. And besides, I was black. Sure, the natural tendency would have been to quit, but I had total faith in God, and I believe that He takes a personal interest in my life. Debbie went on to perform beautifully, and she won over the judges. When crowned in September 1989, Debbie Turner became the first Miss Missouri to win since the pageant began in 1921. She also became the third black contestant to wear the Miss America crown. All those who hunger for the riches that life has to offer must have faith. A man without faith is a man without hope. Faith is born within the hearts of those believing in strong convictions and higher powers. There is tremendous power in faith. It is through faith that you'll arrive at the destination you've so chosen. It is through faith that you'll break the bonds of poverty, because poverty confines no man who has faith. It is through faith that you will eliminate fear. Fear is faith in reverse gear. Though fear is real, it is one of the strongest forces known. Faith is stronger. Faith always overcomes fear. Faith is trust and believing without proof. It is never static, but like life, it is constantly in motion. Faith can live only so long as it is being used. Every time you master failure, your faith becomes stronger and you are better prepared to meet your next obstacle. Faith, applied, put to work, is the beginning of all self-confidence, all self-reliance. It is the moving spirit of personal initiative and enthusiasm. Until you learn the basic fundamentals of applied faith, your accomplishments will be few. Faith can move mountains. The fundamentals of faith. The fundamentals of faith begin with a burning desire for a specific purpose and a reason for that purpose. As an illustration, consider for a moment the reason why you are reading this book. The object is quite naturally to acquire the ability to transfer thought into action, and action into physical realities. In general, the fundamentals of faith are these. Positive mental attitude. The removal of all negative emotions such as fear, hatred, jealousy, and greed is an outgrowth of our understanding of self-worth. Anyone who has advanced mankind through innovation or improved service has usually done so without the approval of so-called progressive men. Edison's light bulb and the Wright brothers' conquering of the skies are worthy examples. A constant struggle, a ceaseless battle to bring success from inhospitable surroundings, is the price of all great achievement. However, careful inventory of your past defeats and failures will demonstrate that all difficult experiences do carry the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. Go back into your past and analyze the times you tasted defeat. Chances are that if you would have withstood defeat long enough for your wounds to heal, you would have been able to find the seed of an equivalent benefit. Search diligently for that seed, and sooner or later you'll find it. The power of prayer. Most people who believe in a higher power believe in prayer. It is through prayer that we commune with the infinite. It is through prayer that we align ourselves with universal principles, which, if we obey and comprehend, we can consciously use to further our ideals. Debbie Turner is a splendid example of this spiritual idea in action. Every man or woman is his own savior because each has his own direct approach, if he so chooses to abide in him. Through prayer, each of us has the power of faith, though few of us consciously use it. One does not possess this power over and above another, or to a lesser or greater degree. It is a part of our divine heritage. Heavyweight boxing champion Joe Frazier once remarked, "As important as road work is prayer." The business tycoon S.B. Fuller, in his quest for his definite purpose, once told a writer, "I had exhausted every source of credit I knew. It was in the solitude of my room where I knelt down and prayed. My answer came within the next day." A man who later became president of Liberia, William Tubman, said this about prayer: "When God has put a dream in your heart, he means to help you fulfill it. To gain his help, you must ask for it, and this asking is prayer." Armed only with his immovable faith, and in the ultimate victory of his cause, a diminutive Gandhi-like figure has emerged as the most visible and most outspoken critic for social change in South Africa's brutal rule over 26 million blacks. He is the Most Reverend Desmond Tutu, Anglican Archbishop of Cape Town and 1984 Nobel Peace Prize laureate. Even in the face of constant government harassment, he has refused to be silent. "The worst thing they can do to me," he says, "is kill me, and death is not the end for someone who has faith." Look about you and you will find that the world's most successful people are those who readily apply faith through their capacity for prayer. Self-suggestion. How many times have you heard it said, "Just believe you can do it, and you can"? Many stories have been told of the great reserves of the subconscious mind, how under its direction and by imparting its enormous strength, frail men and women have been able to perform feats beyond their normal powers. It is the act of believing that is the starting force or generating action that leads great men and women to accomplishment. "Come on, men, we can beat them," shouts someone in command. Whether in a game or on a battlefield or in the strife of life, that sudden voicing of belief, challenging and electrifying, reverses the tide. I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. Similarly, a man engaged in concentrated effort often talks to the man within. This self-talk, or self-suggestion, as it has been called, is completely self-contained. Self-talk is often the power that inspires the machinery of achievement into operation and causes the subconscious mind to begin its creative work. It is the repetition of words or phrases that transforms faith into belief and finally into accomplishment. Autosuggestion can take the form of thinking, seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, and smelling through the power of your imagination. Be the best, were the hypnotic words of faith that pack pride, a sense of mission, and achievement into the rich and rewarding life of Dr. Ronald McNair, Challenger astronaut. Edwin Moses, the one-time world record holder in the 400-meter hurdles, utilized self-talk during his training sessions for the 1984 Summer Olympic Games. By affirming his statement of faith and positive expectancy, "I'm the best, I'm the best," he captured national acclaim as the gold medalist in this event. If you can keep your head when all about you. During 1968, his first year with professional football's Oakland Raiders, Art Shell had memorized the poem, Rudyard Kipling's If. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. Shy, soft-spoken, but not easily intimidated, even as a rookie offensive lineman, Art Shell shared a private dream with his teammate Gene Upshaw of someday becoming an NFL head coach. At 6 feet 5 inches and weighing more than 300 pounds, Shell could shock opponents with his size alone. But he was a gentle giant. Moreover, he was an intelligent player who fastidiously scribbled detailed notes in his playbook. In team meetings, he always asked probing questions regarding strategy. Night after night, he studied game films at home. He made it his business to learn what each offensive player's assignment was on every play. During the off-season, Shell volunteered as a line coach with area colleges. He worked at this every year until he retired in 1982. In an illustrious 15-year career, all with the Raiders, he had played in the Pro Bowl 8 times, anchored an offensive line that took his team to 2 Super Bowl titles, and in 1989 was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Nevertheless, at 42, with his playing days behind, Art Shell wondered if he would ever get an opportunity to coach on the professional level. He pondered his future and quietly recited the poem he learned 21 years ago. The answer to his question would come sooner than he thought. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. In 1982, Shell was offered the job as Raiders offensive line coach, working under then head coach Mike Shanahan. Shell eagerly took on his new responsibilities and did everything he could to foster a winning image. But Shanahan had his problems. He had coached the Raiders to an 8-12 record in less than 2 seasons, becoming the first coach in 27 years to leave the franchise with a losing record. With the program in disarray and Al Davis, the Raiders owner, dissatisfied with the direction of the club, Shanahan was dismissed. In a major turn of events, Davis then selected Shell to direct the team. For Art Shell and a race of people, the historic event came on October 3rd, 1989. The NFL had had its first black head football coach. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distant run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and, which is more, you'll be a man, my son. Some say that success is timing, some say it's destiny or pluck, but for 21 years it was auto-suggestion that had inwardly directed Art Shell. For his entire football career, he had used that poem as a point of reference. These are fundamentals of major importance that prepare the mind for the expression of faith. The man who has faith in himself brings under control and direction those powers of his subconscious. He also inspires a similar feeling in the minds and hearts of others with whom he comes in contact. A study of achievers will disclose the proof that those who arrive or do things are marked by deep intuitive faith in themselves. These individuals overcome temporary defeat and use their failures as stepping stones to ultimate victory. They are the living expression of Henley's Invictus. They indeed are the masters of their faith, the captains of their souls. Unfortunately and unnecessarily, there are far too many who live dissatisfied lives. Counted within these ranks are black Americans, too many to number. Every crowded project or public housing tenement harbors the lives of those who drift through life without a major purpose or goal, who don't apply the power of this principle of faith. These lives are wrecked by the aimless expenditure of time championed with a litany of self-limiting and negative beliefs. Every day, there are those who lose faith in themselves and then blame their loss on others. This is one of man's greatest faults, to blame his family or his spouse for his laziness and his failures, when his own inability to coordinate his activities and direct his mind to the ends of his own choice lies within himself. Listen to the words of one inner city resident as describe a life full of despair. We got civil rights, we got welfare, but look around here, he says as he kicks a pile of empty beer cans littering the sidewalk. When I was growing up in Mississippi, we were poor, all right, but we didn't have madness. Now we're just stuck here in this ghetto watching Oprah Winfrey on TV and listening to gunshots at night. What has gone wrong for the 5 million black Americans still trapped in festering inner city ghettos? Why do 1/3 of all black families remain mired in poverty? Why is the jobless rate for black teenagers nearly 40%? Why are 60% of all black children born out of wedlock? And why has the American ghetto become a self-perpetuating nightmare of fatherless children, welfare dependency, crime, gangs, drugs, and despair? The answer is clear. Does discrimination play a part? Certainly. How about the lack of a quality education? That, too, has done its fair share of damage. But the real cause remains hidden from view. These depressed souls have never taken a hold of the power that lies within their grasp. Applied faith. Go back through the pages of time and you will observe that the story of civilization's unfolding leads invariably to the works of men and women who cracked open the door to achievement, using applied faith as the master key. Observe, too, that great achievements are always born of hardships and struggle and barriers that seem insurmountable. Obstacles that yield to nothing but an indomitable will are overcome by an abiding faith. You must make the first move. There is a legend of a man who was lost in the desert, dying of thirst. He dragged himself on until he came to an abandoned house. Outside of the dilapidated, windowless, weather-beaten shack was a pump. Water at last, he thought. He stumbled forward and began pumping furiously, but nothing came out of the well. As his heart raced, he noticed a small jug with a cork at the top and a note scribbled on the side. You have to prime the pump with water, my friend. P.S. And fill the jug again before you leave. He pulled out the cork and saw the jug was full of water. He weighed his options. Should he pour the water down the pump? What if it didn't work? All of the water would be gone. If he drank the water from the jug, he could be sure he wouldn't die of thirst. But to pour it down the rusty pump on the flimsy instructions written on the outside of the jug? Sweating profusely, he listened to his heart and chose the risky decision. He proceeded to pour the entire jug of water down the rusty old pump and furiously pumped up and down. Sure enough, the water gushed out. He had all he needed to drink. With a thankful heart, he turned his thoughts upward. He filled the jug again, corked it, and added his own testimony to the words on the bottle. Believe me, it really works, but you must have faith. The people who really succeed are those who dare to risk, who challenge the status quo and push themselves beyond their normal limits. No person ever fully discovers and develops all the potential within himself until he expresses his faith. How one woman tapped the power within. As a fitting climax to this chapter, study the story of a woman who carefully took stock of her abilities and circumstances, and who took matters into her own hands and shaped a glorious future. Explore her secret of success. Look deeply into every word. If you can do this, if you can lay your finger on the key principle that took her to the top in her profession, you can equal her achievements in almost any calling for which you are suited. My grandmother epitomized the person who constantly searched inside for strength. Barbara Gardner Proctor, says Barbara Gardner Proctor. Though she was deeply religious, she never asked the Lord to do anything she could do herself. And she taught me many values, foremost of which was to simply keep the faith. Barbara Gardner Proctor was born in a forgotten small North Carolina town choked with poverty. The house where she lived had neither running water nor electricity. She never knew her father. Her mother, whose sights were focused elsewhere, left the raising of her child to her mother, Barbara's grandmother, a dynamic woman with strong but tender hand. Coralie Baxter would share years of wisdom with her granddaughter. She was loving and affectionate. Beyond that, she was strong-willed and courageous, says Proctor. She had plenty of dignity, pride, and was inner-directed. My grandmother never misunderstood or misjudged me. But most important, under her influence, I learned that unfavorable circumstances, for the most part, are temporary, and they can be changed simply by keeping the faith. Adhering to her grandmother's wisdom, Barbara Proctor would change her life. In her grandmother, Barbara had a most enthusiastic champion who would urge her to attempt great things. Miss Baxter's beliefs in personal excellence caused her granddaughter to view her life and surroundings in an entirely different light. Always an excellent student, Barbara received a scholarship to a small Talladega college in Alabama, where she majored in both English and psychology. Through hard work and determination, she graduated in 3 years. Because she had a head start on her future, campus life seemed snail-paced compared to the lure of the big city. So she packed her belongings, bid her classmates farewell, and headed for Chicago, where she searched for opportunities. Her search did not come easy. Barbara would spend the next 3 years careening from job to job, from freelance writer to disc jockey to Girl Friday, looking for anything to hold her interest and give way to a career. Her wandering came to a halt when she was contacted by a local advertising agency that needed the services of a young, energetic copywriter. Barbara knew very little about advertising, but was willing to give it a try. And besides, based on her talents and creativity, she thought she might be able to tackle a job and make a name for herself. She joined the small but reputable firm and pushed forward. Her instincts were right. The advertising business intrigued her. She was attracted to the industry by a convergence of factors: products, personalities, creativity, and constant challenge, all squeezed into fast-paced deadlines. Writing ad copy can be tough, but to this self-starter, it came naturally. Barbara put her skills to good use. She turned her imagination loose as her employer assigned her to work on high-level accounts such as General Motors, Procter & Gamble, and Coca-Cola. In 5 years, she worked for 3 different agencies, learning the business from the ground up. By 1969, she was earning more than $40,000 a year, and her future never looked brighter. I was a hot property, she mused. She became the first black advertising executive in Chicago. But rougher waters loomed ahead. It was the 1970s, a time of increasing social consciousness and awareness. Everything and everybody appeared to be making a statement. Advertising became receptive to the images of the day, and Barbara Proctor seemed especially in tune with the times. Uneasy with the long-term impact of her company's ads, she refused to work on several socially unpopular ad campaigns and was charged with insubordination. Regrettably, one thing led to another, and she was eventually fired. Out of work and with few options for the future, she began to question her life's direction. Her grandmother's teachings began to cross her mind as she looked for another career. After months of soul searching, Barbara came to the realization many entrepreneurs have. There is room for only one dream in any organization, and from this moment on, that dream will be mine. She desperately wanted to be her own boss. Having mastered her trade, Barbara was convinced the time was right for an ad agency that addressed the needs of the black consumer. She studied the spending habits of black Americans and knew that manufacturers could not afford to overlook this expanding market. Black consumers are different from white consumers, she explained. They have different tastes, different preferences, and much more brand loyalty. With proposals in hand, Barbara presented her ideas to the top ad agencies in Chicago, but received no takers. Unemployed and with dwindling funds, she decided to start her own firm. She approached the area banks and similar lending institutions, but encountered only more frustration. Her difficulties increased as potential money sources closed their doors while creditors closed in. Down to a few dollars, she sat numb and motionless in her Chicago apartment, fearing the worst. Emotionally spent, she asked for divine guidance. In my hour of need, she recalled, I found my greatest strength to be my grandmother's values. Keep the faith, she told me, keep the faith, regardless of the appearances of things. Over and over, I recited those 3 words, keep the faith, until my answer came. Short on collateral, but long on faith and hope, Barbara applied for a loan from the Small Business Administration. Since she hoped to start a service business and had no collateral, she normally would have had little chance to acquire such a loan. But with faith, the tide shifted. She audaciously persuaded the loan officer to ask the heads of three of Chicago's leading advertising agencies what salary they would pay her if she were an employee. The answer came back, $65,000, $80,000, and $110,000 respectively. In a whirlwind 24-hour period, Barbara Proctor obtained an $80,000 loan, enough to keep her fledgling agency going until she landed her first 2 accounts, Jewel Foods and Sears Roebuck and Company. 20 years later, Chicago's Proctor & Gardner Advertising has become a small but respected firm with an estimated $15 million in annual billings. The company's original 2 clients are still on her client list, which also includes G. Heilman Brewing, Alberto Culver, and Kraft Foods. Many years ago, Coralie Baxter told her granddaughter of her priceless gift. She also taught her to apply this life-saving principle throughout her life. Some people seem to use this power instinctively. Others have yet to learn it. And still others, the vast majority of us, have never really begun to use this tremendous power at all. The principle that I am trying to emphasize is the power of faith. The moment you apply the power of faith in your life is the moment you will begin to step ahead of the crowd. 2 facts stand out in Barbara Proctor's rise to prominence. First, the circumstances in which she found herself as a child might have discouraged the average man or woman from pursuing his or her dreams at all. And second, through faith, she was able to withstand the challenges of a major crisis. There is nothing new about the principle of faith. It may be applied by anyone who makes use of desire and belief as strongly and intensely as Barbara Proctor did. One of faith's stranger features is that it generally appears because of some emergency that forces men and women to look beyond the power of the ordinary thought for the solution to their problems. It is during these emergencies that we draw upon the secret power from within, which knows no resistance great enough to defeat it. The scripture says, according to your faith be it unto you. Remember, no more effort is required to aim high in life, to demand abundance and prosperity, than is required to accept misery and deprivation. Search until you find the secret power that dwells within, And when you find it, as you most assuredly will, you will have discovered your true self, that person who you were meant to be.